themselves as soon automatically. If you go down to renderer here, you can see it assigned the sprite lit default material to it. I would like to start off by creating a brand new material. Let's go into our assets, create a new folder called materials. Open that up. And here, let's create a new folder called particle system. Go in there and let's create a new material called enemy damage mat 1. And I would actually like to change the shader to universal render pipeline 2D sprite unlit. And the reason I want to select unlit is you can see if we assign this material, drag that in there. And you can see if we dim the global lights, these particles are going to show up no matter what. So if you would like them to be affected by lights, then be sure to select the 2D sprite lit default shader. I'm going to select a texture here and go with the circle with soft edge. That is included in the asset pack that you can download. Again, it's in the description. So let's select that. All right, so we've got something. So if you've never worked with a particle system before, this can all be very intimidating looking. However, you'll find that as you make a lot more particle systems that you start playing around with the same values again and again. But we'll go through quite a few of the most common settings right here. So I'm going to let this just keep on playing so that I can see what we're changing here. That you see very select that. All right. That is included in the asset pack that you can download. Again, it's in the description. So let's select that. All right, so we've got something. So if you've never worked with a particle system before, this can all be very intimidating looking. However, you'll find that as you make a lot more particle systems that you start playing around with the same values again and again. But we'll go through quite a few of the most common settings right here. So I'm going to let this just keep on playing so that I can see what we're changing here. Now we're going to change the duration over here to 0.25, and that's not going to be noticeable because we are looping common settings right here. So I'm going to let this just keep on playing so that I can see what we're changing here. Now we're going to change the duration over here to 0.25, and that's not going to be noticeable because we are looping right now, but the duration is the amount of time that the particle system is actually spawning particles into the world. And for a lot of these here, I like to change the drop down. I'm going to go to start lifetime. And let's choose random between two constants. Giving it a little bit of randomness in every way that you possibly can usually results in something that looks a lot better. So let's go 0.25 and 0.4. I'm gonna move. And usually results in something that looks a lot better. So let's go 0.25 and 0.4. I'm gonna move this over so I can see it a little more. For our start speed, we're gonna go 6 to 8, and let's do our start. Size and also do random between two constants and go 0.15 and 0.55. So what I would like to get is these particles that when I hit the enemies, they're going to shoot out with some trails behind them. And it's going to look really nice. So next, let's change the emission. So currently it is spawning 10 particles per second. I actually don't use rate over time too often. If we zero that out and if we go rate over distance instead, what you can see is that will only spawn particles if you are actually moving the object around in the scene. And especially if you're going to be using rate over distance, the one thing that you really want to know is, do you want to be using the simulation space local or world? You can see right now with local, it's moving the whole particles. Kind of has its own spawn point that doesn't change. So that's what those do. Let's zero those out. I actually want to go with a burst. Let's click the plus. And actually these default settings are just fine. I'm just going to uncheck looping because that's getting a little bit annoying. Next, So let's define the shape of the particle system and get it looking in kind of the right shape that we're going for. So let's open shape here. Now I almost always stick with circle, and I'll tell you why. I have an orthographic camera right now, so you can't tell. However, for those of you who are using a perspective camera, you can see that even though this is a 2D scene, if you're using a 3D shape like a cone, it's actually going to be spawning particles that get closer and closer to the camera. And you might want that, but in this case, I definitely don't. So I'm actually going to leave our camera at perspective to make sure that we don't make that mistake. So what I'm going to do is change this to circle. It automatically rotates particle systems on the X by -90 degrees. Let's zero that out, and always make sure your Z axis is on 0 as well, especially if you're working in 2D. So I don't want to spawn all of these in a circle. I really only want to be using a portion of this circle. So for the arc here, let's go with 75 degrees, and let's rotate it -35 on the Z-axis. Now that's already starting to look pretty good there. Let's add a few more things. You can change the radius thickness if you want. So you can see I'm changing that line there, and that's just keeping the area from which the particles can actually spawn bigger. And if I zero that out, then it's only going to be able to spawn right on that line. So go with whatever your preference is. I'm going to leave it at 0. Next, let's choose color over lifetime, and we'll actually need to check that and open it up. So this is a gradient here. We've got the alpha controls on the top and the color controls at the bottom. So for the starting color, let's just go with kind of a light red. I'm going to insert that there. So for the starting color, let's just go with kind of a light red. We get this nice up, and if you click this and nothing appears, just drag this bar up. I'm gonna select this one and add this key up like this. So that's gonna get bigger, really going in here. Let's open that up. Noise is really cool, and I'll turn just also change the size over lifetime. Select that and open it up. And if you click this and nothing appears, just drag this bar up. I'm gonna select this one and add this key. Thing appears, just drag this bar up. I'm gonna select this one and add this key. Up like this. So that's going to get bigger really, really quickly and then kind of slow down for most of the lifetime of the particle system. Next, let's get some noise going in here. Let's open that up. Noise is really cool, and I'll turn looping back on so you can kind of see what this does. It's only affecting the position because we've got a 1 in the position amount. You can fiddle around with the strength and the frequency to really start adding some randomness to the movement of your particles. And of course, you can do that with rotation as well as with scale if you really want to. I'm going to zero that out and put a 1 back in the position. And let's go with 1 going behind these. So as soon as you select trails here in your enemy damage trail, mat 1, every single particle is now going to have a trail that follows behind it. I think that's a little bit too much. So let's go with half the amount. Let's also make the lifetime only half the lifetime of the particle system. I'm also going to give the trails a color over lifetime gradient. So I'll go over here and select gradient. I'm going to give it that similar nice red color and decrease the alpha at the end as well. gradient. I'm going to give it that similar nice red color and decrease the alpha at the end as well. I'm going to change width over trail to random between two constants. Go 0.75 and 1.2. There we go. That's looking really nice. Let's save that as a prefab now. So back in our root assets folder, let's create a new folder called prefabs and just drag end as well. Gradient. I'm going to give it some. I'm also half the amount. Is up. Let's duplicate that first material and name it enemy damage. Trail mat 1. Let's assign that and open up the trails. So let's go with half. So going to give the trails a color over lifetime gradient. Let's save that as a prefab now. So back in our root assets folder, let's create a new folder called prefabs and just drag that in there. The other really cool thing with particle systems is if you child object of your initial particle system. If you go back to your particle system and you enable external forces, you can now apply all of these outside forces to your particle system. So let's try gravity just as an example. It's not doing a whole lot. So let's increase the range